Welcome to Epic Conversations. I'm Diane Grubus. My special guest again is Lesley McClure, my very good friend. And we are continuing our discussion on forgiveness. And Lesley has an awesome story about being innocent. Now, let me start with a quick definition of forgiveness so we can know what we're talking about. So, Lesley, I looked up the definition of forgiveness, and it's a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve forgiveness. And I mean, that includes ourselves too. Forgive ourselves. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting, though, nor does it mean condoning or excusing offenses. But you have a powerful testimony.
Yes, actually, I do. As you know, I used to install hardwood floors for 14 years, 12 to 14 years, something like that. And there was a situation where I had hurt my right knee. In one of the places where we were working, and it had grown steadily worse and worse, and I wasn't really dealing with it. Well, at the same time, my boss and I he drove a truck, I drove a truck, a big van that was fully loaded with all the equipment, all the saws, all the trims, everything was on these two trucks, and we had driven to a job in Illinois, and we were getting ready at the end of the job to go back onto the highway and head back towards St. Louis. I used to live in St. Louis.
Okay, if you hear the noise in the background, that's Tweety and Peppy, our parakeets.
Yes.
They're part of the show. Go ahead.
So I was in front of my boss at the time, driving his van, and I was deciding I was going to drive with my right foot, or my left foot, because my right knee was hurting. So I came up to the top of the ramp, and we were getting ready to make a left-hand turn onto the highway, and the cars in front of me stopped suddenly because of the light, and I thought I was putting my foot on the brake, and I put it on the accelerator and rammed 5 cars. And it just went boom, 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 boom. And I was probably going 30 miles an hour, I don't know, somewhere at that point. But I was trying to slow down, and when I didn't slow down, I stepped on the accelerator even harder, thinking, wow, the van is not stopping.
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh. And it was like, at that point, you can't stop. And I just rammed these 5 vehicles.
Oh, no.
So I slammed it in park, and my immediate response was, oh my gosh, my boss is going to kill me. He's going to absolutely kill me. This is monumental, and the weight of everything just comes crashing down on me. So the first thing I did, believe it or not, was I just sat there and started praying, God, you got to help me. Help me. I don't know what to do. And so I jumped out of the van and started checking the lady in front of me. And then I ran back to the van and got in the passenger seat of my boss's van. Now, he had not hit me. He saw what was happening, and he stopped in time.
Okay.
So it was probably about 3 or 4 minutes later, I jumped in the van, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And Perry was my boss, and he said, so, are you guilty? And that's all he said. He's staring straight out at the car and the wreckage, and he's like, are you guilty? And I'm like, yes, I'm guilty. I'm so sorry. You go in your excuse mode. My knee was hurting. And he never even asked me any of those questions. All he asked me was, are you guilty? And he said, Lesley, are you guilty? And I kept saying, yes. Look what I just did. And he kept asking me that. And finally he said, if you're guilty, you need to get out of the car. And I'm like, okay, something's happening here, and I don't know what's happening. And I said, Perry, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're asking. Mm-hmm. I committed this crime. What are you asking me for? And he just looked at me and he said, Lesley, this was paid for before the foundation of the earth. And if you're guilty, you need to get out of the car, because I'm using all of my faith to believe that that's true. Wow. And then he stopped and he just waited, and he looked back out at the cars and he said, are you guilty? And I said, no, I'm not guilty. And when I said that, everything in me said, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And then and then it got really interesting. He said, then what are you? And he says, and I said, Perry, I don't know. I don't know. This is an in-between stage. I don't know. And he said, are you innocent or are you guilty? And I said, I'm innocent. And he says, what? And I said, and the whole time I'm trying to imagine in my mind Jesus dying on a cross for every single sin, including this one. And I'm trying to imagine that blood being shed for me. I'm trying to imagine him working to stay in faith, believing that that is the truth. So I said, I'm innocent. And I'm like stuttering. I'm innocent. And he says, what? I can't hear you. And I said, I'm innocent. And you could, the first time I said that really strong, you could feel this. And I go, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. And I'm thinking, am I getting ridiculous? I mean, someone's going to have to pay for this insurance. I mean, there's lawsuits and all these your mind goes all over the place when you start to walk in the innocence that Jesus paid for. And you don't know, where does the consequences come in? Where does the payment come in? How does the favor of God come in to fix those things? And the funny part about it is I continued to say that over and over. And finally, it was like there was this release. And he says, now get back in the van and stay in the van. And don't say anything to anybody. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Walked right back in the van. Didn't say a word to anybody. And later on, I found out that not one person sued.
Praise
that every
God.
piece of insurance was paid for, and his insurance did not go up. It was a supernatural fix of that situation.
Because you entered into that supernatural realm when you said, I'm innocent, and knew it to your core.
Yeah.
because you've been
forgiven. And it was, and the weight of it was all off of me. And I knew that whatever was going to happen, that God was going to fix it all for our benefit.
Yes.
I mean, it was supernatural.
And he did. That's the supernatural that we're talking about, to walk in forgiveness, knowing that we're forgiven. It brings us to a new level of supernatural. Amen.
It was really good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That is awesome. I know you had shared that with our life group that we had at one time. And oh my gosh, people from the life group all week, when they make a mistake, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us again today. And we'll see you next time on the show. And in the meantime, have an epic day in the Lord.